Hello, everyone. I'm your host for the evening, Tim Eubanks, and this is the BucklesBerry Lemonade podcast. Tonight, we're doing something a little different. No case numbers, no courtrooms, no timelines pinned to a corkboard. Tonight, we're taking a break from true crime and stepping just a little sideways into the unknown. We're talking about real encounters, moments people weren't looking for, didn't expect, and they still don't quite understand. We'll start close to home in Grifton, North Carolina, where someone may or may not have been alone in their kitchen. And whatever it was seemed pretty handy with a measuring cup. Then we'll head into the deep woods, where a listener has shared a story of a voice calling his name. And it definitely wasn't his mama. I'll also share one of my own personal experiences from when I was a kid in eastern North Carolina. It's a story I really don't tell very often. And from there, we'll look at something standing at the edge of the tree lines. And we'll hear sounds in the woods that don't quite belong to anything that we know. Now, none of this is meant to prove anything. We're just here to listen and maybe swap a few stories along the way. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's start in a farmhouse kitchen near Grifton, North Carolina. This one comes out of eastern North Carolina. A resident moved into a farmhouse built in the 1920s. The kind of place with worn floorboards and a kitchen that's seen a lot of meals made from scratch. You remember those from scratch, just like Grandma used to make on Sunday. Well, from the start, they had this eerie feeling that they just weren't alone in that kitchen. But here's the thing. It didn't feel threatening. And then one afternoon, while baking for a church social, they realized their favorite measuring cup was missing. And the search was on. They checked all through the kitchen, went all through the pantry. Nothing. It's as if the measuring cup was completely gone. Now, by chance, they just decided to search through the whole house. You know how things go sometime. You lose something, even though it's normally confined to a certain spot in the house, like maybe your bathroom or your kitchen or the living room. I mean, the TV remote's supposed to be in the living room. But like most people, you make an effort, just as these people did, to search the entire house because you never really know. Well, once they came back into the kitchen, there it was, sitting perfectly centered on top of the open container of flour, like it had been placed there on purpose. Maybe all purpose. Later that month, while baking again, well, this time the lady of the house heard a woman's voice. Older, but gentle. And all she had to say was,
"The oven's ready, sugar."
And right as the timer was about to go off, no one else was in the house. The resident didn't call it a ghost. She calls it a permanent house guest. Someone who seems to enjoy biscuits, quiet kitchens, and helping out whenever she can. Well, whatever that is, apparently it has a soft spot for baked goods. But not every voice that shows up comes with good intentions. Coming up next, a listener story out of West Virginia. A child in the woods, a familiar voice, and a moment where instinct said, don't answer. But before we share Todd's story, let's go back to what caused him to share his story with us to begin with. This is the Appalachian Mimic. Stay tuned, guys. Jacob had always felt at home in the Appalachian wilderness. An experienced hiker, he never really scared easily. That is, until this night. As he trudged along the fog-laced trail, The sun dipped below the treetops, casting an eerie shadow across his path. He was alone, or so he thought, until he heard a familiar voice. Jacob! It was his brother's voice, calling from behind a gnarled oak tree. Jacob froze. His brother was miles away at their campsite. Jacob! The voice called again. Same tone, same inflection. But something was off. It was too precise, too mechanical, as if someone or something was repeating it from memory. Against every instinct he ever thought of having, Jacob took a step forward. The woods fell silent. Then, in his own voice, whatever this was, whispered, Jacob, help me. His blood ran cold. The voice wasn't right. It was empty, hollow, like a recording playing through a broken speaker. The hair on his arm stood up, and a shadow shifted behind the tree. Jacob, well, he didn't want to see what it was. He ran, his heart pounding, until he reached the safety of their campsite. His brother was indeed there, fast asleep, never having called his name at all. Jacob never went hiking alone again. This next story comes from one of our listeners. Todd grew up in West Virginia in the early 1970s. Back then, much as it does now, life meant the woods, the deep woods. Todd said he was around 10 or 12 years old, miles back in a holler, when he heard his mother's voice calling his name. The voice sounded close, too close, but it wasn't his mother. There were no footsteps, no rustle of leaves, no branches breaking, no movement. Just a voice calling to him from somewhere it shouldn't have been. Thankfully, Todd didn't answer, and he didn't follow it. And all these years later, Todd has stood firm. He says, I know what I heard. And Todd's question stuck with us. If something can copy a voice, what is it? We may never know. In Todd's question, well, that's hard to shake. If something can sound like someone you trust, then what exactly are you hearing? And the truth is, Todd's story isn't the only one like it. Up next, I'll tell you about the time I heard a voice in the woods. And no, it wasn't my mama either. But first, we have to pay a few bills, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned, guys.
Well, my darlings, we shall return after a brief message from our sponsor.
This is Lisa from BucklesBerry Lemonade. We're so glad you joined us. Please hit the like and subscribe button and comment where you're listening from.
We now join our regularly scheduled programming already in progress.
Welcome back. As most of you longtime listeners know, I did in fact grow up outside LaGrange in the Jenny Lynn BucklesBerry area. The following story, although I don't tell it very often, took place when I was around 8 or 9 years old in the Jenny Lynn area. I was playing out back of the store in the woods across the field. And as I was playing, it's like everything stopped just for a second, which was unnerving in itself. And I heard a voice that sounded as if it was all around me, and it called my name. Now, it was a female voice, and I knew it wasn't my mother or one of my aunts, and I didn't recognize it. And it kept calling my name. And the more it called my name, being 9, the more afraid I became. And my name kept getting louder. Whatever this was, it began to be louder and louder. And I decided it was time to leave. But as I was trying to run, it's like I became slightly disoriented, almost as if everything was in some type of spin. And it's like I almost froze in place. And it began to call my name louder and louder. And it also seemed as if it was getting closer and closer. And I did the only thing that anyone could do at that time. I simply said, "Jesus, help me." And as soon as those words left my mouth, whatever that noise was, whatever that sound, the mimic, whatever we want to call it, demonic, it was gone. I could hear the birds chirping. I could feel the leaves rustling, the wind blowing. And I got up and I took off and I ran home as fast as my little legs could carry me. And that has been, 50 years ago. I've never set foot back in those woods again, nor will I ever. And that's my story. That's my encounter with whatever it was calling my name in the woods that day. And thinking back through that story got me curious. So I decided to do a little digging in our own backyard out LaGrange way. And as it turns out, mimics aren't just in the mountains of West Virginia. They are indeed right there in Lenoir County, setting in tobacco barns, out in the cypress swamps of Lenoir County. They know our names, and they're learning our voices. And sticking roughly around the same area, let's take Hardy Bridge Road, for example, right where it dips down toward the noose. A hunter, a man who claims he's not prone to flights of fancy, well, he was heading to his deer stand. And he heard his buddy's voice, clear as a bell, he said. "Hey, come look at this," it said. But here's the problem. His buddy was a good half a mile away or more, only on radio, meaning if he's not communicating through the radio, you can't hear him. And that radio was bone dry and silent. But that voice in the swamp, it was loud and clear. It didn't have a heartbeat. It was just an echo of a person waiting for someone to follow it. And the following story took place in 1994, somewhere in Lenoir County. A teenager, he claims to have heard his sister screaming for help from inside a dark, abandoned tobacco barn. And he was halfway to the door when his real sister walked out of the house behind him. Just imagine if he'd have taken 10 more steps to that barn. I don't think he would have found his sister. He probably would have found the very thing that was wearing her voice, like a stolen coat. Scary indeed. Not all experiences come with answers. You don't investigate them. You don't go looking back. And you just remember them. And maybe stay out of the woods. And for those of you who are curious There is a difference between being curious and foolish. I encourage you to stay out of those woods. You never know what you'll find. More importantly, what may find you. Coming up next, an Eastern North Carolina encounter where there's no voice at all. Just something standing at the edge of the tree line, watching. And here's another Eastern North Carolina story shared online by someone who still won't go into the woods behind their property at night. They describe seeing a tall, pale figure near the tree line. No clear face, no visible feet. It didn't walk. It drifted, almost glided. But it stood there, silent, watching. And after about a minute, it simply glided back into the woods. No explanation, no animal tracks found the next day. Just a feeling of being seen and watched. I can tell you right now, I'm with them. I would not be going into the woods behind my property either. Seeing something is one thing. Hearing, well, that's something else. That's different. Especially when it sounds like it's answering something else. Up next, strange calls in the woods near the North Carolina-Tennessee border. Not aggressive, not threatening, just aware. In this story, a resident familiar with wildlife describes hearing howls at night that didn't match anything they knew. Then came something even worse. Response calls. One sound answered another, deep in the trees. Wood knocking. Almost as if someone was taking a baseball bat and knocking it against another tree. Not aggressive, curious. And after several nights, the sound stopped. The online poster said no explanation ever came. But for us Bigfoot enthusiasts, we know that's two Bigfoots talking to each other in the deep woods. And if you're still with us, I'd like to give you a big shout out and say thank you to all the listeners that found our little podcast over the last few years. We feel very blessed to have been one of the recipients for the Spotify 2025 Rising Star Award. And we wouldn't have gotten that without you. So thank you. And as a bonus feature, we decided to go into the Wayback Time Machine and brush off one of our earlier episodes, simply titled Strange Encounters. And that's what it's about. Some of them are paranormal in nature. Some of them are creepy, but all of them are scary. Stay tuned, guys, for the double feature tonight. Strange Encounters is up next. This seems like a million years ago, but it only happened a few years ago. I'm really ashamed of it all now, but anyway, here's my story. We spotted an old couple on the street. They looked like easy targets. There were 4 of us. We decided I'd be the lookout while my boys took their stuff. JB ran up and demanded their cash and jewelry. And he screamed at them in his most threatening voice. "Don't make me ask twice," he bellowed. That old man, he just smiled. And it was a smile straight from a nightmare. All he said was, "I've been waiting for a night like this for a long time." Ty, my other buddy, he reached for the old lady. She didn't even flinch. She just snarled, grabbed him, lifting him up off the ground. Then the old man grabbed JB and flung him into a parked car, shattering the window, setting off the alarm. The door was bent. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. In a heartbeat, they were on Ty. His screams, I can still hear them in my ears. Max, my other buddy, he tried to move and run, but they were like lightning. I was just so scared. I was paralyzed with fear. And I watched what they done to him. Oh my. They literally drained him. I mean, just right before my eyes. That old man's eyes were glowing red, and in the most demonic voice, he screamed, "He's mine." And it just echoed. And then I saw what he did to JB. Man, I was so scared. I begged for mercy. And they just laughed at me and looked at me, and all they said together in unison, someone has to tell the story. And just like that, they were gone. I mean, I blinked and they were gone. Believe you me, I got right with God after this.
Hello, my name is Sharon, and I work at a preschool in Montana. I want to share with you the most horrific experience of my life, my family's abduction by aliens. In the fall of 1989, my then husband, our 3 children, and I were abducted and terrorized every night for 6 months. Even now, my grown children suffer from PTSD because of what we endured. We lived on 8 acres in a semi-remote location in northwest Montana when the abductions began. I believe it started in October. It was definitely fall because it severely impacted my husband while he was hunting. One evening, while we were playing family games, my husband and I saw a streak of fire shooting across the sky. We rushed outside and saw that whatever it was seemed to have crashed on the upper part of our land. The next day we investigated, but found no evidence, just burnt treetops. The following evening seemed normal. We put the children to bed and turned in ourselves. Around 3 a.m., we were awakened by bright lights flooding our entire house. We both felt an intense awareness that we were being watched. I remember being hooked to some sort of TV monitor night after night with hundreds of other humans. I even have a scar from it. Those days and hours are etched into our memories. We reported the incident to our pastor, who came and blessed the house, which seemed to help.
This happened in 2022. My 17-year-old daughter was home alone with our 5 dogs. At dusk, she saw something very large on 2 feet standing at the edge of our woods. Strangely, the dogs never barked. When she looked at it, it spun around and walked off quickly. At first, I thought she might have been imagining things. But later that year, I experienced something similar. As I walked up our driveway, I heard a stick snap in the woods, and I looked to my right, about 30 feet away, and I saw a very large figure walking away from me down a path in our woods. I stepped back and got one more glimpse of it before it disappeared. I immediately texted my daughter, asking her to describe exactly what she saw when she saw it and where it was at. When she got home, she showed me the exact spot. She said it was behind the basketball net and almost as tall as the bottom of the net. She saw it only for a few seconds as it walked quickly behind and back into the woods and out of her view. Right after that, she heard what sounded like it running away deeper into the woods. She described it as a dark color, walking on 2 legs. I drew what I saw, and she confirmed that it matched what she had seen. I'll tell you, I have to be honest. I really didn't believe in these kind of things until the day I saw it. I archery hunt in our woods all the time and have never seen anything like this before. I looked for tracks. I couldn't find any. Hell, I even looked for scat and didn't find anything. But I know something big is in the woods behind our house.
Years ago, I was staying at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, the very hotel that inspired Stephen King's The Shining. Around 3 a.m., I was startled by the sound of children running up and down the hallways, their laughter echoing through the night. Curious and slightly annoyed, I opened the door to see what was happening, but found nothing. Quick little boogers, I thought, closing the door and returning to bed. The next morning, during a tour of the building, my boyfriend and I were stopped by the guide right in front of our room. To our astonishment, he began telling the story of young girls whose ghosts could be heard running up and down that very hallway.
During my freshman year of college, I spent winter break with my cousins in North Dakota. One night we were drinking in a friend's basement with a few other guys and girls. It was really late, around 4 a.m. I was getting sleepy, so I decided to walk home. Despite the cold and the snow, the houses weren't far apart, and the moonlight made it seem almost bright outside. The path we always took went straight behind the house, through some wooded areas, and then across the open land. As I shuffled through the snow with my head down, I looked up to my left and I saw another figure about 50 yards away, walking in the opposite direction. I saw him just before he saw me, and when he did, he jerked, his arms and shoulders clearly startled. For some reason, I laughed out loud from the shock and just gave a little wave like, "Oh, you startled me too, and I'm sorry." He just stood there staring at me, and I thought, is he going to say something? So I stopped and I looked back at him. He wore a full face ski mask, and he was tall, but he didn't say anything. It felt like an eternity, just me and this strange guy in a ski mask, just staring at each other in the desolate woods in the middle of winter at 4 a.m. Anyway, a huge chill went up my spine, and a voice in my head screamed, "You need to get the hell out of here right now." I turned and walked as fast as I could toward home, not daring to look back. So whoever you are, strange guy in a ski mask, let's hope we never meet again.
You know, I never believed in vampires until one chilly night in my 20s. I was living in a small town in upstate New York, and after a long shift at the local diner, I decided to take a shortcut home through the park. Bad mistake. It was around midnight. The air was crisp, and the park was eerily silent. As I walked, I felt an unusual sensation as if someone was watching me. I turned around and saw a tall, pale figure standing under a street lamp. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light. He smiled, revealing unnervingly sharp teeth. My heart raced, but I couldn't move. He seemed to glide towards me, not walking, but floating. Suddenly, he was inches from me. He whispered in a voice that was both soothing and terrifying, "Do not be afraid." I felt a cold shiver down my spine as he touched my neck gently. Before I could react, everything went black. I woke up on a park bench the next day, feeling weak and disoriented. My neck throbbed, and I noticed two small puncture marks. I stumbled home, trying to make sense of what had happened. I never saw him again, but the encounter left me questioning the existence of creatures that lurk in the shadows, feeding on the living. This experience changed me forever, leaving me with a sense of dread whenever I walk alone at night. The memory of his glowing eyes and sharp teeth haunts me to this day.
When I was a kid, my uncle and I were gathering firewood for my grandmother. On our way back, I felt a creepy sensation of being watched. Just as I was about to look out the truck window, my uncle shouted, "Don't." I froze. My heart was pounding, and then stopped when I heard a tap on the truck window. My uncle sped up, praying loudly in our native tongue. The truck suddenly dipped, and he told me to look at him and not turn away. The tapping came again from the back window. Eventually the back of the truck bed, dipped again, and then it was quiet. My uncle reassured me, and we'd ask my father for a prayer to make the evil thing forget us. Years later, I had a nightmare about that night and called my uncle. He said he only saw eyes like brake lights watching me. I joked about why he didn't just put on the brakes when it was in the back of the truck, and he simply replied, after a long pause, because it wasn't alone.
While hiking off the main trail along a river, I noticed an older, creepy guy in an open Hawaiian shirt following me. I kept going until I hit a steep bank and had to turn back. I tried to avoid him by cutting through a crane brake, but creepy guy still stopped me and asked, "Hey, looking for a good time?" I firmly said nope and quickly noped myself right out of there.
I had a horrifying experience that I know, well, it couldn't have been a nightmare because I keep getting flashbacks and I feel sick with fear when I remember. I woke up surrounded by people or things. I really can't recall their appearance. I screamed and ran to my mom's room, but she couldn't hear me. When I pulled the cover from her head, nobody was there. Everything just seemed to melt around me. There was a cannula in my hand. They injected me with some type of strange fluid. The pain was unbearable. It felt like it was burning deep in my veins, and I blacked out. Smoke filled my throat. It tasted acidic and thick. I pushed my way out of a tube, and I ran, but they held me down and injected me again. The pain I thought was going to kill me, but then I blacked out, and I found myself back in my room. I tossed and turned all night, my voice silenced by thick smoke. Screamed for them to take it out. I didn't wake up to 4 p.m. the next day when my mom had to wake me. The veins in my hands were bulging, and I felt an itching and twitching pain in my fingers. Painkillers, nothing ever helped after that. They say I'm crazy, but I don't think so. I'm not sure what I experienced. Sleep paralysis, maybe. But as far as I'm concerned, I had some kind of abduction, and I never want to encounter this again.
Well, when my daughter was 2, I found her twirling paper towel tubes tied with twine in the air. I asked her what she was doing. She said she was practicing her nunchucks. I was very confused as she'd had no way of knowing what they were. I asked her what she meant, and she said that Adam had told her how to make them and showed her each night how to use them. She went on to say that Adam told her to practice because she may need to know how to defend herself someday. I almost freaked out, but asked her what Adam looked like. She said he was tall, blond, and had blue eyes. She said, "Mommy, you know how he looks. You know him. He died of a headache." I had to leave the room. You see, 4 months before she was born, my tall, blonde, blue-eyed martial arts pro friend had died of a brain aneurysm at the age of 27. She has not spoken of him since that day, so I'm not sure if I scared her with my reaction or she had completed her lessons.
Last night, a friend rushed me out of my house to catch the opening act at a local bar. After a few drinks, I realized my phone wasn't in my pocket. I checked our table, the bar, the bathroom, his car, with no luck. So I used my buddy's phone to call mine. After 2 rings, someone or something answered. It gave out a low, raspy giggle and hung up. They didn't answer again. I just gave up. I just assumed my phone was lost or stolen, and I just headed home. Wouldn't you know it, I found my phone laying on my nightstand right where I left it.
I just moved into a basement suite and noticed something strange. I always locked the deadbolt, but not the door handle when I went out. Yet, when I came home, the deadbolt would be unlocked and the door handle locked. Initially, I thought I was confused, but it kept happening. Assuming it was my landlady, I didn't say anything. One day, after finding the wrong lock locked again, I discovered an old book in my fridge that I had never seen before. This creeped me out because I collect old books. I finally called my landlady and told her what was happening. She freaked out, saying the previous tenant was a creepy guy with mental health and drug problems. She had all the locks changed that day, and it never happened again.
I'm your host, Tim Eubanks. Thank you for listening to the BucklesBerry Lemonade podcast. And until next time, please remember to lock your doors, turn on your porch lights, hug a loved one, and stay safe out there.